Hello everyone, it's Black Shadow here and welcome to this tutorial video. So it's been a couple of years now since this game first came out, Dune Imperium, and that time we have seen absolutely tons of players getting involved. In our partnership with TTS Club, we are regularly seeing about 500 to 600 games of this getting played every single week, which is completely insane, and I think is a testament to the game as well as the community that has been gathered at the same time. And that's awesome. Anyone will say getting new people involved in what you do is how you grow a hobby, how you keep it going, how you develop it and move it to the next level. But with obviously a lot of the play now being done currently online at the moment, especially in regards to our sort of realm of things, there's a lot of folks that have never played this online and haven't really ever done anything like this online. We've all been there. I definitely was a while back as well. And you see something like this on a screen, and it's kind of intimidating. You kind of wonder what the heck's going on, how you control this, and that can definitely be a barrier of entry. So we've just recently launched a section for the TTS Club Discord, which is focused specifically on sort of newer players, not just those new to the game, but also new getting involved into how to actually operate this game online as well. So that brings us to the purpose of this video. This is going to be a pretty comprehensive guide for how to run Dune Imperium over on Tabletop Simulator, which is where a lot of the online play for the game currently occurs. And basically, it's going to be introduction into everything from joining games to what the board does to how to interact with it to short keys. There's a lot of sections that will all be in the timeline and description below. Also linked below are various other resources that have been available currently. Orski's video for how to obviously get involved with the TTS community in the first place. Also linked is the Watch It Played guide for the rules of Dune Imperium, which this video is not going to cover. We're not here to talk about how to actually play the game, which is purely how to work it. And also a link to a very useful document courtesy of LSR, our rules lawyer, who has compiled an extensive FAQ combining from the official one provided by Direwolf, as well as various other rulings from Direwolf and Paul Denon over across from the internet. They've all been compiled into one place, which is really super useful, and I would encourage you to keep on hand. So let's start from the very top. Let's say that you've obviously got involved with the game via the FGs in the TTS Club Discord, and you're ready to rock and roll, but you've never actually used Tabletop Simulator before. We've all got a first time. Fortunately, TTS is a very, very decent piece of software, and is actually pretty simple to run, although there are a lot of little cute little intricate short keys that we'll talk about some of those later on, which can make you experience a heck of a lot better, but fortunately, you don't need many of them for this, which is really useful. If you have never used TTS before, by the way, there is a short tutorial of how to work it as well. You can access it from this main menu by clicking the little light bulb here. And really useful. It just takes like 2 minutes. It just gives you a quick tutorial of how to do basic things here. Flipping cards, decks, pulling stuff out, all this sort of bits and pieces. It's all very, very useful, and I would encourage you to do that. Once you familiarise yourself with the basics of how to work this, we can then look to join a game. So, very simple. Just simply click the join button. And you get the browser here, and this will populate with a list of every currently active game on Tabletop Simulator at this exact moment. Now, the good news is that you don't actually have to scroll through hundreds of games. There is a very useful little text box here, so you can look for the server in particular. So there's two ways you can do it. What you can do, and what I tend to do, is if I'm playing Dune Imperium, I'm looking for a game, is I will just simply type Dune, and it will look for any server in the world that has the word Dune in it. It could be from the name, sometimes you get it from host, but typically what I'm doing is I'm then shortlisting all the games here that are Dune Imperium, and you'll see here Dune Imperium Rise of Immortality Scripted++, which is the main mod that we use, which is also linked in the description below. And then what you can do here is look for the particular host you're looking for here. So it could be Grizzle, it could be Fireblades, it could be anyone here. Do bear in mind that some people's names on Discord is not necessarily their name on Steam. There are a few people that have differences, so you've got to be careful of that. And for example, like if I was to look for, you can also search directly, of course. Like I could look for Grizzlepuff's game here, but there's some people that if you look for their name specifically, you won't find it. And what you'll have is, say, it might be Grizzlepuff is known in Discord, but their Steam name's actually different, so just be aware of that. The alternative is just making your own game as well, which you can definitely do. Click the create button. You've got single player if you just want to kind of mess about with some bits and pieces. Multiplayer, which is what you'd be hosting games on. There's also this hot seat option, which is designed specifically for if you've got multiple people in the same place that want to play a game. But this can actually be pretty useful for just kind of like an alternative to single player, because you can basically sit with multiple people and kind of like act out like there's multiple people in a game. It's what I'll be using for most of this demonstration. Anyways, if you want to make a multiplayer game because you're hosting, click multiplayer here, and then you're going to have the ability to name your server whatever you want. It could be anything you like. You've got the server type. Typically, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be putting the game onto public, so it's findable by other people, and then you're going to put in a password, which for TTS Club games is typically TTS Club, all lowercase, and that's the standard for everyone. And then your maximum players, which is anywhere from obviously 4 for the minimum amount of players, all the way up to 10. Usually I would suggest people leave a couple of spaces open. Sometimes, especially with games of more known players, people do like to sit in and actually watch on them. So I would definitely encourage just having a couple extra seats. Just helps for all sorts of reasons. So here is the mod, and again, at first time, it looks like there is quite a lot going on here, which there kind of isn't, kind of isn't. The mod we use is sort of unusual in that it's designed so that everyone plays from the same point of view, i.e. this. A lot of TTS mods will have people kind of sitting around in a circle and players facing the center, which is what TTS is more designed for. So for example, if I also take a seat here, like say in the red position, you'll notice that the name is actually upside down. The idea being is that normally the player would be looking this way and everyone else would be looking this way, which is why you'd then be able to see the insignias. But R1 is different. We run it like this. It just found it more easier for the purposes of the game. Anyways, the board is not that complex. I'll give you a quick tour of it. So obviously you've got your various player seats here. Down here in the center, we'll talk about this a bit more in a moment. This is how you set up your game, the various options. Down here, you've got your various guides, your FAQs, various bits and pieces. There's a very little handy short chart here. If you're not used to playing Dune Imperium, just to give you a quick brief of how a standard turn works. Also other bits and pieces as well, ties for conflicts, some credits as well. All sorts of lovely good stuff here. If we go up to the top of the table, here's where your reserves cards are kept, your intrigues, your research tracks, and your X Negotiator stuff, if you're playing with the various expansions that require that. Further up, we've got where your sword masters are kept. We've got these little voice tokens as well. There's a card in the game called the Voice, which will block a space temporarily. The actual physical game doesn't actually provide any components to its to say what that is and for you to notify that. So we just made a little couple of tokens ourselves to help better differentiate that. This is where all the various victory points I kept are not faction related. So you've got the container for combat VPs, although those will be moved down to here as where relevant. Spiceless flows, you've got various bits for techs here, flagships, dreadnoughts here, intrigue ones, Chome Share, Sleep Must Awaken, various ones from cards, Sidina, Chome Delegate, all this lovely good stuff here as well as the initial pile for techs. The good thing is, once you do set up for the game, almost everything in this board is scripted. I would honestly wager this is probably one of the best mods currently going on the Steam Workshop for its conciseness, efficiency. Takes a lot of stress out of people having to track loads of bits and pieces. Not everything, admittedly. We'll talk about that a bit later on. But as long as you kind of play along with the mod, it is an absolute joy to work with, and a huge credit to everyone who's got involved with that. Obviously Murphy, who originally made it, Asmodeus, who's now currently running it, and there's other work going on currently as well. Apart from that, we have the leader selection. This is where you'll be pulling your leaders from, regardless of how you decide to choose your leaders, as well as some combat sounds you can activate. These play whenever a combat phase begins, just to notify people, right, we're into combat now, in case everyone's like tabbing out. And above that, we also have the massive list of fan leaders that have been created over the time as well, which is pretty awesome. It's always changing, always adding to leaders as well. We've got some content coming out on the channel very, very shortly, actually, regarding our look at a lot of these leaders, so do keep an eye out for that. So having a look at a playmat in specific, there are a couple bits that are worth drawing your attention to. A lot of it's probably pretty self-explanatory. Here's your deck of cards, that's where your discard is where your leader will go. Your control markers, all this sort of bits and pieces. These are your various resource counters as well. Left click to increase, down click to decrease them. You'll also notice if you click up and hold for a moment, that it will actually mark on the chat a log of what you're doing. Almost everything that has a scripted button in this game will, when it works, make a log in the chat that everyone can see, which is really useful, and I would thoroughly encourage using the scripting where possible. That way, if you're like, oh, did I give myself that 2 spice from that combat reward, you can go back and actually check to make sure that you did. Here we have got a little counter of your victory points. Bear in mind, of course, it can go beyond 12. Very coolest thing as well, this is all scripted too. So you'll notice everyone currently is on 1 point. But if I was to take this point away from yellow, you'll notice that it comes down here immediately. Very, very useful, very important. So as you add and track players and points, this will do it automatically. Very useful. We also have here the tech board, and what this is a special scripted zone. And this is where, as you buy techs from the X Guild, if you're, of course you're using that expansion, put them here, and some of them will actually automatically script back into the game. And what I mean is, if we get a couple of techs in particular, I'll show you what happens. Well, I'll try to show what happens. So if we go for, say, Shuttle Fleet here, for example. Shuttle Fleet's a good example of a tech that has like some automation. So at the start of a round, you get 2 Solari. So what will happen is, if you put this onto your tech board, then every time you clean up and a new turn starts, the game will automatically give you that 2 Solari. Really, really useful. Another good example would be as well is Restricted Ordnance. This is the tech that gives you +4 swords if you have a high council seat. And again, if you have this on your tech board, when you start putting troops in, assuming you have got the high council seat, it will add those 4 swords to combat for you automatically, which is really, really useful. That will happen anyways. If I was to move these troops in, you'll notice that the tracker here is done automatically. This does not apply for reveal effects or intrigue cards, so just bear that in mind. But just putting in troops automatically will update that. Very useful. The tech board also commonly gets used as a place for players that will discard their various cards they don't need at the game once they're trashed out. Players will either usually put them somewhere on the tech board just to keep a rough track, and it is public information, so players can request to see that. But some players also will put them into this little trash pile here. Though it's not so common, and players will sometimes use this to keep that, just to keep this clean and not too cluttered. If you ever want to look into these or any container in the game, just to note, you can right click and click search, and it will give you a list of everything that's in there. Ignore all of this stuff as well. Should we note you can also actually do this on decks of cards as well, if necessary. Say, for example, you're looking at your discard pile, and you want to quickly check, say, what cards have I bought so far? You can click on your search pile, and you can look at everything that's in there. Do bear in mind, though, that this is listed in a specific way, i.e. this is the top card of the pile, and this is it working its way back down. You can shift the order of cards in here, but what you'll notice is, say, if I was to grab this and move it in front, it'll actually change it on the board here as well. And it'll also make a note saying that you've manipulated a deck. So this is obviously to make sure that people aren't trying to like cheat or anything like that, which very rarely is the case. But just, you can look at this, but don't actually try moving stuff around in here. Last thing to make a note of here is down here, and that is the player shuffler. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but typically when people sit down, especially for casual games, once everyone has taken their seat on the board, click this, and players will get shuffled about here. It won't really work particularly well on this hot seat. You can see how player 1 was here, is now down there. Player 2's come across. You can see how players have been moved around there as well. It uses the black seat, which is the GM seat, which is a seat that every board has. Someone that can sit down and look at everything that every player has. This is sometimes done for broadcasting reasons. It's also done just for, make sure people are following the rules in big games. And as such, currently uses that seat to shuffle. So if anyone's sitting in that, they'll have to move out of that as well. Just have the 4 players shuffle up. This then goes, and you're ready to get started.